Module 1. Negotiations and Bargaining. A negotiation or bargaining situation typically involves two or more parties with conflicting interests seeking to reach a mutually acceptable agreement. Some of the key characteristics of such a situation include the following. Interdependence. The parties involved in a negotiation are interdependent, meaning they need each other to achieve their goals. Each party's actions can affect the other party's outcomes. Conflict of interest. The parties involved have different interests and objectives and may see the situation differently. Communication. Communication plays a critical role in negotiations, and parties need to exchange information and express their views clearly to reach a mutually beneficial agreement. Bargaining power. Each party has a certain amount of bargaining power, which is influenced by factors such as their resources, their ability to walk away from the negotiation, and their leverage in the situation. Trade-offs. Negotiation involves a process of trade-offs, where each party gives up something in order to gain something else. Time pressure. Negotiations may be subject to time constraints, and the parties involved may feel pressure to reach an agreement quickly. Complexity. Negotiations can be complex, with multiple issues to be resolved and various factors and considerations that need to be considered. Satisfaction with a negotiation. Satisfaction with negotiation is determined by the process through which an agreement is reached and by the actual outcome obtained by the negotiation. Negotiations are essential to everyday life, from personal relationships to business deals. The satisfaction of the parties involved often measures the success of a negotiation. Satisfaction with negotiation is determined by the process through which an agreement is reached and by the actual outcome obtained by the negotiation. The process of negotiation is critical to the satisfaction of the parties involved. A negotiation process that is respectful, collaborative, and transparent is more likely to lead to a satisfactory outcome. Effective communication is a critical component of the negotiation process. When parties communicate effectively, they can better understand each other's perspectives, identify areas of agreement, and explore possible solutions. Good communication also promotes trust and can help to build or maintain positive relationships between the parties. The outcome of a negotiation is the other key factor in determining satisfaction. The outcome should meet the goals and expectations of all parties involved. If the outcome is perceived as fair and reasonable, the parties are more likely to be satisfied. An outcome that needs to be more balanced and meet the needs of one or more parties can lead to satisfaction and damage the relationship between the parties. In addition to the negotiation process and outcome, other factors can impact satisfaction. The relationship between the parties, the level of preparation, and the ability of the parties to be flexible and creative in finding solutions can all impact satisfaction. The bargaining range. The bargaining range refers to the range of possible outcomes acceptable to both parties, using a distributive beginning. It is the difference between the seller's minimum acceptable price and the buyer's maximum acceptable price. The bargaining range is essential in negotiations as it sets the boundaries for a successful agreement. When parties enter negotiations, each party has a target price or a desired outcome. The bargaining range is determined by the seller's minimum acceptable price, which is the lowest price they are willing to accept for the good or service they are offering, and the buyer's maximum acceptable price, which is the highest price they are willing to pay for the good or service. The bargaining range is the difference between these two prices. The bargaining range allows the parties to reach a mutually beneficial agreement. When negotiating within the bargaining range, both parties can compromise and find a solution that meets their needs. However, negotiating outside the bargaining range is unlikely to be successful as one or both parties would need to concede too much. Reciprocating concessions. Reciprocating concessions is an essential part of the negotiation process, and it involves conceding in exchange for a concession from the other party. While the concept is straightforward, Reciprocating concessions can take time and effort. One reason reciprocating concessions can be haphazard is that negotiations are complex and dynamic. The needs and priorities of the parties can change over time, impacting the willingness to make and accept concessions. Furthermore, parties may have different expectations about the number and scope of concessions that should be made. As a result, finding the right balance between making and accepting concessions can be challenging. Another factor that can make reciprocating concessions haphazard is the potential for miscommunication. Parties may interpret concessions differently or need to fully understand the impact of a concession on the other party. Additionally, parties may need clarification about the underlying interests or goals driving the negotiation, making it challenging to identify mutually beneficial concessions. Finally, the emotions and personalities of the parties can also impact the process of reciprocating concessions. Negotiations can be stressful and challenging, and parties may become defensive or aggressive. This can lead to a breakdown in communication and make it challenging to identify areas of agreement. Voluntary process. Voluntary action in negotiation refers to an action taken by one party that is not required by law or contract, but is done voluntarily as a gesture of goodwill or to facilitate the negotiation process. Voluntary actions can build trust and rapport between the parties, leading to a more positive and collaborative negotiation environment. Examples of voluntary actions in negotiation include making a concession, providing additional information or resources, or agreeing to a non-binding trial period. By taking voluntary actions, negotiators can demonstrate their commitment to reaching a mutually beneficial agreement and increase the likelihood of a successful outcome. Modest resistance point. Modest resistance points in negotiation refer to the lowest level of acceptance a negotiator is willing to agree to. This is the point beyond which a negotiator is unwilling to go any further and would rather walk away from the negotiation. Modest resistance points can help negotiators to establish their bottom line and negotiate from a position of strength. By clearly understanding their resistance points, negotiators can avoid making concessions detrimental to their interests and ensure that any agreement reached is consistent with their goals and objectives. Distributive bargaining. In distributive bargaining, the goal is to divide a fixed amount of resources between the parties involved. To achieve the best outcome for oneself, a negotiator should focus on the following 4 crucial tactical tasks. Identify the other party's resistance point. Understanding the other party's resistance point can help a negotiator make better offers and counteroffers to reach a favorable agreement. Increase bargaining power. A negotiator can increase bargaining power by emphasizing their alternatives to the negotiation, highlighting their strengths, and reducing the other party's bargaining power. Use information effectively. A negotiator should use information effectively by sharing only the necessary information and withholding any information that could be used against them. Make credible commitments. A negotiator should make credible commitments to the other party to build trust and establish a positive relationship, increasing the likelihood of reaching a favorable outcome. By focusing on these 4 tactical tasks, a negotiator can increase their chances of reaching a successful outcome in a distributive bargaining situation. Interests and negotiations. Interests refer to the underlying reasons or motivations that drive a party's position in a negotiation. The 4 types of interests are: substantive interests. These are the real negotiated issues, such as price, quantity, delivery, etc. Process interests. These are the procedural issues that affect how the negotiation takes place, such as timing, location, agenda, etc. Relationship interests. These concerns are about the future relationship between the parties, such as trust, reputation, and communication. Identity interests. These concern how the negotiation affects one's self-image or sense of worth, such as status, recognition, and respect. Understanding and addressing all 4 types of interests can help negotiators create more value and achieve better outcomes.